Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today it is Mommy Monday and I am kind of finishing where I left off on my last video, and that is I did a pregnancy story in that one, and now I'm going to do the birthing story for this one. Obviously I don't really think I'll get too graphic just because that's not my personality, but if I happen to do, I'm just throwing a disclaimer out there now that if certain things you just don't like hearing about, then you know, maybe you just want to like skip over this and tune in next week where I'll talk a little bit more about like my favorite baby things or things just like that. But anywho's, I'm just going to jump right in. Now, my due date was March 26th, and I always joked the entire pregnancy that he was either going to come on 2 days. It was either going to be March 26th because that's when we were due, and if he's a planner like me, he would come then, or April Fool's Day, because the entire pregnancy he seemed to have like a very humorous personality, which I know is strange because he's in your stomach, but he just did things that were kind of comical. So we said it's gonna be one of those 2 days. So on March 26th, you know, I went about my day, didn't really have anything planned, so I filmed some YouTube, edited some videos, and just kind of sat around the house. And I want to say around like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I noticed that I lost what I assumed was the mucus plug. I can't, those words to me are just like so weird, but I didn't really think of anything of it because I've heard of people losing it you know, towards the end of their pregnancy, but it didn't necessarily mean labor was impending. So I didn't get excited or do anything like that. I just kept an eye on things, and I'd say probably about 2 hours later, I decided to lay down for a nap. I was just tired, and I woke up and was just coughing. It wasn't anything alarming. I just woke up and coughed and got out of my system and noticed that it almost felt like I had peed myself, but I was like, this is weird. Like, I know you lose control of your bladder when you're pregnant, but I've coughed and sneezed before and nothing like that ever happened. So I went to the bathroom and it was clear. It wasn't pee, it wasn't anything. And so, you know, I went and called my sister, who was a nurse, and thought I would talk to her about it. And meanwhile, I keep having this feeling that I'm peeing myself. I literally changed by the end of the night probably 6 times, and you know, at that point I'd realized that it was not pee, it was my water breaking. And I'm telling you right now, in the movies they make it seem like a gush of water just flows out of you, and that is not how it is. I've never heard of anybody saying that, but in my family I'm the first person whose water broke, so I didn't really have anybody to turn to. And me and my sister was just like, are you sure it's your water? And I'm like, if I was peeing that uncontrollably, I probably have bigger issues than just my water breaking. So no, I knew it was my water breaking. It was clear, and it was like coming at a slow pace. It wasn't like just gushing, but you know, it was just occurring. So I immediately called my doctor, and meanwhile this is probably taking place within like 30 minutes, and I was told to start making my way to the hospital. I called my husband, he made its way home, and we just, you know, got the dog all situated, called my in-laws to come get him, and made our way to hospital within about an hour of it breaking. And when I first got there, you obviously have to go through, at least at my hospital, a triage, just so they can make sure you're actually in labor and everything's okay. So I did that. We were helped right away because when your water breaks, it kind of means within 24 hours the baby has to be out, or just further risks happen because it's literally like the amniotic fluid coming out. So that happened, and I finally got my own room about 2 hours later. So we probably made it up about 10 o'clock. And while this is all occurring, I actually did not contract any further. I'd been sitting at about 1.5 centimeters dilation for, I want to say, about a month and a half, but even with my water breaking, it did not go anywhere. So they decided early on that I would most likely have to be induced. Now what that just means is through your IV they kind of just give you something called Pitocin, which just kind of, it's almost like a man-made version of the same hormone that kickstarts labor within your body. And so I got started on that, and I've heard so many people have horror horror stories with Pitocin, but to me it honestly was completely fine. I didn't even notice a difference. Like, they had kept coming in and asking me if I was feeling any contractions, and I wasn't, so I was very confused. But when your water breaks, they can't actually, or they're not supposed to, check you that often, and that's just because it can impose more risks to the baby, because now everything down there is kind of open and at risk for infection if too many things are going and being felt around. So they couldn't really check me too often, or didn't want to check me too often. So finally, I want to say maybe about like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, I started feeling them, and they at this point were about 3 to 4 centimeters, or 3 to 4 minutes apart. So that meant to them that I was pretty well dilated in their opinion. So they kept asking me if I wanted the epidural, and honestly, I just wanted to hold off for as long as possible, because this may make me sound extremely ignorant, but I didn't know that the epidural was a continuous flow through your back. I honestly thought it was just a shot that you got through your back, and once it wore off, it wore off. So I didn't want to waste it. I wanted to make sure I got it close enough to where I was actually going to be pushing, that it would be fine. And so I decided to, about 6 or 7 o'clock, my contractions were literally about 1 to 2 minutes apart, and it wasn't super intense, but I have a very high pain tolerance. I always have my entire life, so it was more so annoying that, like, they keep telling you to get your rest, but you can't do it when they are so close together, because you'll like fall asleep for a second and then wake up because you have to like breathe through one and just focus on that and focus getting through it. But, you know, the contractions for the most part were pretty easy for me. I had my husband with me, and, you know, I don't know, like, it just felt like a really bad cramp. So I would focus on that and then be done. And finally, we just discussed it, and I decided to get an epidural. So that was about 7 a.m. The guy came, did it. I honestly didn't think it was that bad, and it kind of hit me right away. Now, I wasn't completely numb from the waist down. I like still could, if I wanted to move my legs, I could. It's just the sensation was completely different. Like, I didn't really feel the contractions. Towards the end where I was about to push, I did start to feel them. So to me, I feel like somebody turned off my epidural, which I was not a fan of, but it was getting really intense. But at first it was nice. I slept from 7 until literally I was pushing. I woke up around like 11:30 and was like, if I feel the urge to push, does that mean he's ready? So around that time, we started pushing, and they had warned me that most first-time moms push for about 2.5 to 3.5 hours. And when you're sitting in that bed and you're like, I'm ready to get the baby out, you're like, 2.5 to 3.5 hours? Like, really? Like, no, that's not happening. He's coming out now. So I start pushing, and it's so slow to start up, because, I mean, you're trying to focus on using muscles that you haven't really used before. And this is going to be extremely strange, but they tell you to just imagine that you're pooping. So that is the only way you can focus your energy down there. And every single time they kept telling me, oh, like, we see his head, or he has a lot of hair, or blah, blah, blah. Like, so I pushed, and he was out within an hour. Towards the time I was pushing, like I said, I'm pretty sure my epidural was turned off, because I felt a tremendous amount of pain, and I had even mentioned them before I started pushing that it just did not feel the same, and it was starting to hurt. And they said that they gave me an extra dosage, but you never really know. I didn't see anybody walk over to the machine, so, you know, I'm just going with what they said. So I had him out within an hour. Now, if you watch my pregnancy story, you know that my child has a little bit of a heart issue, but we were told that the NICU was not going to be involved at all, and all of a sudden, I'm not joking, there was so many people in our room waiting for him to pop out. And when he came out, they normally recommend that you do skin to skin, for a good bit, and they laid him on my chest. I remember he wasn't crying, but it wasn't because he wasn't breathing. He just seemed like a very calm baby. So when he laid him on my chest, he was just all covered in goop and completely fine. And then literally that was like 3 seconds, and they took him away. and I had a second or third degree tear. I think it was a second degree tear. So I had to be taken care of while my husband went and took care of the baby, and he went into the other room, and when I look over there is like, it seemed at the moment like 100 people in the room with him, but really it was only, I want to say maybe 8 to 10, and it was because there was the NICU people, there were certain like specialized doctors, and then my team of nurses and doctors. So it was super intense in that moment, and I had to get stitched up because obviously if you tear, you're supposed to get stitched. And again, I did not have an epidural, so I had to have 2 nurses like holding my arms down, and the doctor did not seem happy that I could feel it, but she was like, "You're not going to feel a thing," and I felt everything. It was probably worse than labor to go through that, just because every little stitch, everything, I was like counting down the seconds, like how many more do you have to do, and it was super intense. But in the end, obviously my child is worth it, so I would go through it again for him. And later we found out, I'm kind of not happy with the amount of care that we got in the hospital. My husband and I both agree on that, and that's just because, you know, in terms of the epidural, if I'm going to get it, I want it to actually be used how it should be. I should have not had to feel that if I had the epidural, and the doctor even seemed surprised that I felt that, and by that point it's just too little too late. Like, the epidural wouldn't have kicked in, they gave me the extra dosage. We found out 2 hours later that so many people were in the room because the cord was actually wrapped around the baby's neck. About halfway through labor, I want to say probably right after I got the epidural, they said that it seemed like the baby had swallowed some blood, and at that point they seemed concerned, but when the cord came out wrapped around his neck, they didn't seem concerned at all, and we didn't find that out for a long time. And also, my original idea was to breastfeed, but normally if you're going to do skin to skin, they say, you know, if the baby looks like he's ready to latch, go ahead and try, but I was not able to do skin to skin because they whisked him away. Some of the doctors were yelling at my husband for trying to get closer to him, or, you know, to say, "Oh, well, we can't feed him if he's hungry." Like, we were literally told to wait to feed our child. And it seemed like he was ready to latch. Like, he was sucking, he was trying, like, it was intense. He ended up being about 8.5 pounds. He was 8 pounds, 8.4 ounces, and he was 22 inches long, which is a super long baby. But I was 23 when I was born, so I think he definitely gets that from my side. Eventually, after they had kind of cleared him and said that they were going to take him up to the NICU soon, they just wanted to observe and make sure he was okay after both his heart and the cord being wrapped around. They just wanted to make sure. He had a very raspy, wheezing kind of breathing. It was very abnormal. It scared my husband, but they just wanted to observe him for 24 hours. So they brought him back over, allowed me to do skin to skin for, I want to say, like 2 minutes. We actually attempted to latch, but they had to take him away, and so, you know, they took care of me, and then we went down to recovery. And when we first started feeding him, they knew I wanted to try to breastfeed, but it had been, I want to say, like 6 hours, and we still had not seen him. And we went down to the NICU, and he was sleeping, he was fine, but I was like, this has been a really long time, like, when should I start doing this? So they had held us off for so long that I didn't know if they fed him, what. I attempted to pump, nothing happened. So anytime that I could not get any food for him, we would have to supplement formula, because obviously the only way to get a baby out of the NICU is to make them, you know, get healthy and be at the normal levels that they need to be at. So we would supplement formula when we had to, but I was still attempting every 2 hours to get him to latch as well as pump. He did latch a few times, but he didn't really get much. I honestly, looking back, I really don't think that I produced milk or enough at all, because I did not have the same symptoms after, like, postpartum when it comes to that a lot of people do. So we eventually switched everything over to formula. It was a lot less stress on me. I felt terrible for not being able to feed him. He got out of the NICU about a day and a half later, so we gave birth on a Friday, and he was out probably by Saturday night, and everybody was ready to meet him, and he was just golden. Like, he slept really well. We fed him all the time. He ate all the time. He was always so hungry, and he did very well. So overall, I mean, would I have liked to have breastfed? Yes, but making the decision to switch to formula helped a lot with stress, and you know, I felt really down on myself at first, but you just can't help. I mean, they kept telling me that once a baby got used to formula, some nurses say that once a baby gets used to one thing, they only want that one thing. Some can switch. I truly believe that when they get used to one thing, that is it. That is what they want, because after he was bottle fed, he did not want anything to do with my ladies. So, you know, nothing wrong with that. As long as he's healthy and eating, that's what really matters. And he is definitely a very, very large boy right now. He's very healthy. So that overall is my birthing story. You know, he was out of the NICU in the day and a half. We didn't leave any later. He left with us when we were discharged on that Sunday, and he's been growing and everything's been going really, really well. So if you guys are interested in all about anything afterwards in terms of his heart or anything like that, definitely let me know down below. But that is an entirely different story. We saw so many doctors for the first like 2 months of his life, and it was crazy and hectic, but that is a very, very long part of the story. So if you guys are interested in that, just let me know down below and I will do that. But overall, that is my birth story. In the end, having a child come out of your body is one of the most rewarding and amazing experiences, but it's not a piece of cake. It does hurt. It's not fun. It's exhausting. But in the end, it is worth it, because you'll look down and see what you just created with your significant other, and it is truly the biggest experience of my life. And he's just so cute. I just want to pinch his cheeks all the time. But now looking back, I can't imagine that he was like in my stomach. But yeah, so that was my overall birthing experience. Would I do it again? Of course. My husband and I are already interested in another, but we don't know when that'll be. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you are liking this series so far, definitely give this video a thumbs up, and next week we will start talking all about the babies and the goods, and what I've been loving since I had him. So definitely stay tuned, and other than that, I hope you're having a terrific day, and I will see you all very soon. Bye!